Hello and welcome to the Criterion 40. We are brought to you by CreateContext.com. The same as always. Each week we look at a different movie in Criterion's 40th anniversary Blu-ray collection. This week we are looking at the movie Being There. Hal Ashby's 1979 film Being There is a hilarious satire of white privilege and political theater that might even be more relevant today than it was at its release in the 70s. The film is based on the 1970 novel of the same name. It stars Peter Sellers in what is probably his finest performance, alongside some other film legends like Shirley MacLaine and Melvyn Douglas. Being There is so biting in its humor, but it never delves into mean territory. The film has a sort of love and charm for all the characters in it, even for those who just fall by happenstance into greatness, and those who have seemingly earned it. It's refreshing seeing a take like this in 2025, as a film that would be made like this today would definitely not be so polite to its subject matter. Being There retains a feel-good charm while still being able to poke fun at the elite class. Peter Sellers is probably best known for his role as Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther film series. These films relied on Sellers' bumbling physical comedy as well as his childlike charm. Sellers brings these same qualities to his role in Being There, that of Chance. Chance is a middle-aged gardener with no formal education, an inability to read or write, and a borderline obsessive love of television. He's lived and worked as a gardener for a very rich man in Washington, D.C. his entire life. He can't remember before then, and that's all he's ever done. He gets up, he eats breakfast that's been prepared for him by a maid, he goes, works in the garden, and watches TV, and that's it. Chance may be less of an outright buffoon than Inspector Clouseau, but he is just as clueless. After his employer passes away, Chance is forced to brave the big city of Washington, D.C., where he inadvertently charms every wealthy aristocrat he meets. This conflict is the main propulsion of Being There. Chance without a home and having to learn how to survive on his own for the first time. Chance is very lovable, but a totally dependent middle-aged man. He cannot cook his own meals, he cannot prepare his own wardrobe, and he's never even been in a car. Yet, despite all of these shortcomings, Chance becomes a heavily favored and highly powerful person in Washington, D.C., going so far as even being mentioned as a candidate for president by the end of the film, and this all happens just by happenstance. It's a little bit like a reverse The Emperor Has No Clothes. In that story, a wealthy emperor is conned into purchasing clothes that are invisible to everyone who is incompetent or stupid. Everyone else, if you're not incompetent, you're not stupid, then you're able to see the clothes. The men clearly have nothing to sell him, but no one wants to admit that they cannot see the clothes for fear of being ostracized and mentioned as a stupid, incompetent person. So everyone just kind of goes along with the fact that the emperor has these great clothes, even though no one can actually see them because he's not wearing anything. In Being There, Chance is, frankly, an incompetent, stupid person. I would actually say he's more of an ignorant person. He's just unlearned. He hasn't learned anything, and he's never had to work for himself. But no one around him can see this. He is lavishly praised for his down-to-earth cadence and simple-to-understand metaphors, but those only come because Chance is confused by the questions that he's being asked. It's a con, but an accidental one with no malice, which actually makes the film even harder to pin down and analyze. Chance, who in the film is mistakenly referred to as Chauncey Gardner for most of the movie, infiltrates the highest rank of American politics just by sheer luck, going so far as having the ear of the president very early on in the movie. Whenever a question is asked that Chance doesn't understand, he somehow magically is able to bring the conversation towards gardening, the only subject, aside from television, that he knows anything about. He explains gardening in the most infantile of ways. He says things like, plants won't grow in the winter, but they'll come back in the spring. They need water and they need sunlight to grow. Some need more sun, while others actually grow in the shade. It's all simple third-grade science lessons, but everyone listening adds their own context to these statements that just simply aren't there. There was never Chance's intent to add that context. They assume he's talking about the economy and just using gardening as a metaphor. It's a thin logic at best, but it makes most of the interactions in the film pretty hilarious. We, the audience, we know the truth about Chance, and so does Louise, the former maid who took care of Chance at his previous employment. When seeing Chance on TV, she is the only one brave enough to say the Emperor is wearing no clothes and stamping it with an uncomfortable truth that well-dressed, polite white men typically are able to get away with anything. Being There is a very easy watch, and it's really an incredibly fun movie, but there is not a ton of conflict going on. We are kind of rooting for Chance, but more so than that, we're just kind of amazed at how far he is getting in life, just bumbling around and becoming friends with wealthy, important people and rising in social status. We want him to succeed for sure because he's such a likable character, but we also realize that he has no business holding the type of power that is just being given to him. That's why Louise's statement is so uncomfortable, almost the only uncomfortable moment in the whole film, sans Shirley MacLaine's self-love scene. It's the first time we really stop to think about how and why this is happening. Is it incompetence on everyone's part? Is it an inability to discern profound statements from, as Louise would put it, gobbledygook? Or is it just that when a white man with a nice suit arrives, everyone just kind of tends to take him seriously, no matter what nonsense he's spewing? Chance is an appropriate title for the hero of this film. No doubt an on-the-nose reference to his incredible luck rising through these political ranks. But Chance is also an enigmatic character, not just to those around him, but to us watching him as well. This is all made more perplexing with a remarkable, constantly discussed ending. In the final moments of the film, Chance's friend and his uber wealthy counterpart, Ben Rand, passes away. Chance, throughout the entire events of the film, is seemingly set to inherit Ben's entire fortune and even Ben's wife. At the funeral, Chance slips away and tends to a small tree that's in need of repair. That's something that fell over and he wants to put it back in his place, kind of just Chance being Chance. After repairing the tree, Chance takes a stroll on a lake, walking on water without a care in the world, with no idea of a reason why he couldn't walk on water. This ending is confounding for a few reasons. One, there's a lot of messianic imagery in it, right? With Jesus walking on water. And it's also the first supernatural thing to happen in the movie. Every other move, every other thing that has happened to Chance throughout the film has been improbable, but nothing that actually defies the laws of physics until this one moment. But now we have some evidence that he may not just be lucky, but he's something more than that. There are two readings I've seen of this perplexing ending, and I typically don't look too far into endings, but I wanted to kind of see what other people were saying about it. The first and the most cynical is that Chance is actually more than what he appears in the film. That he's just kind of been toying with everyone, even the audience, into thinking he's a simpleton, kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. But in reality, he's much more than that, has been able to ascend to power through the appearance of a dim-witted man and actually just makes everyone the more stupid around him. This would give credit to the themes of power and incompetence, showing how easy it is for someone to hide their true intentions and make everyone else around them look just as dumb and elevate themselves through manipulation. But I don't really like that ending. And to be fair, the director and the writer, they didn't really like that ending either. I think of Chance as a pure character, one who is lucky and simple, sure, but also someone who hasn't been tarnished by the burden of knowledge or understanding. My reading, the one that I like, is that Chance walks on water simply because no one has ever told him he can't. I like how the director put it on his commentary. He said, "This guy is so stupid he doesn't even know he can't walk on water." He may be simple, living in someone else's house, a benefactor to their money and their spouse, but he does nothing manipulative in the movie to get these things. He is simply a kind man who lends an ear when it's needed and speaks of his love of gardening when given the opportunity. The ending is enigmatic because Chance himself is an enigma. not because he gains wealth and power, but because he never asks for it. He's content to watch TV and tend to the garden, but if you want him to be president, well, that would be just fine as well. And if he needs to walk across the water, well, I suppose he could do that also. If you like Being There and you're looking for something similar to watch, I'd check out Mike Judge's Idiocracy. This 2006 movie, it bombed in theaters, but it has gone on to develop a pretty strong cult following, mainly due to how unfortunately accurate its depiction of the future of America is turning out to be. Idiocracy stars Luke Wilson as a meandering, lazy U.S. Army soldier member. He spends his days watching TV with little motivation or desire to better himself when he is finally chosen for an experiment the Army is running on suspended animation. They grab him and another young woman, a prostitute played by Maya Rudolph, and they are frozen in stasis and then almost immediately forgotten about. They then, through happenstance, wake up 1,000 years in the future to a world that has deteriorated significantly due to corporate greed and control and rampant population growth. Wilson then finds himself as the smartest man in the world based solely on knowing that plants need water to grow. While these are two very different films, Idiocracy and Being There share a lot of the same themes, and not just the gardening ones. They both involve sort of reluctant heroes put in situations that are over their heads. The difference is that our lead in Idiocracy is the smartest man in the world, and Chance, not so much. But in the end, they both have good hearts and a desire to do good, or at least a desire to watch some TV and help people when that is needed also. The last movie I'd recommend is the Martin Scorsese flick After Hours. This is the last Scorsese movie that is not an adaptation or a biopic, at least so far. Maybe he'll do something in the future, but I don't know. He seems to like those adaptations and biopics. And it's a surprisingly different movie from what we've come to expect from the famed director. This film stars Griffin Dunne as Paul Hackett, a young man who ends up just having the worst night ever in New York City. After Hours is a little darker of a comedy than Being There. Being There is very lighthearted, and After Hours is pretty dark and deals with some heavier themes. But both films involve a guy who gets in over his head and whose actions actually have little consequences on the events of the movie. Only in Being There, all of Chance's consequences are good, and in After Hours, they're not as good. Still, though, both films are delightfully funny, and I just always find it entertaining watching a movie where the plot is sort of propelled apropos of the lead character's actions. Thank you guys so much for hanging out at the Criterion 40. We will be back on Friday with a new weekly movie minute on Mickey 17. I'm really excited for that one. If you guys like hanging out, please subscribe. That would be super cool, and I'll see you guys next time. The Criterion 40 is a Create Context podcast. Head over to createcontext.com for more film, reviews, and analysis. Our theme song is Hindsight by Shyloon, provided by the Riot Games Creator Safe playlist. We drop new episodes every Tuesday at 8 a.m.